ask was Julie Halston and Victor Williams. I just had an instinct that you guys would be the most helpful. But I felt shy. I just figured you'd know a lot of New York actors that weren't working that might do it. And look, the two people I thought of are the two people that are taking time out to speak to fans this weekend. I really, really appreciate this. Krista, thank you. And I will leave it up to you guys.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Lauren. Julie, hi.
Hi, how are you? This is great. It's actually terrific.
This is so exciting. Your earrings look absolutely stunning.
Thank you. We're in a pandemic, and it's not like I'm really going anywhere except virtually. But
Right.
I have found, Krista, that I'm not one of the people who sits around in my pajamas. I have to get fixed up and everything because it just helps me mentally. It kind of I feel well, do you know what I mean? I'm sort of ready for something.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. I moved out to Santa Monica a few years ago from Toronto. And so Toronto's a little bit more of that New York vibe, right? So yes, I definitely felt that way. And then out here for the first while, it was nice to be oh, it's a beach town and we just wear our yoga pants everywhere and it's very natural. But I hit my limit during the lockdown too, where I was I need to do something. Even if it's a few days a week, I need to feel like I'm putting myself down.
Exactly. It's you don't want to be too casual, but anyway.
Right. It's trying to find that balance. Exactly. I wanted to get into with you, Julie, right away, since we are here at a Web Fest.
Right.
There are so many things I want to talk to you about, but I would love to hear more about your web series, Virtual Halston. You started that in May, right?
Yes, we started Virtual Halston. It actually came about because my friend Jim Caruso, who really curates a show called Cast Party, and it's a very successful show. And it started live at Birdland Jazz Club many, many years ago. And of course, when the pandemic shut everything down, he went virtual with it. And, I'm used to being on Broadway, to be quite honest. That's what I've been doing for the last X amount of years. And after my show closed in January at Tootsie on Broadway, I just figured I'll go to bed for 4 months. I'll just be like a bear and hibernate, And Jim called me up and said, no, you have to do a talk show. You have to be, doing this. I didn't want to do it. I mean, Krista, I am the most ambitious, non-ambitious person I know. It's I'm so ambitious at 2:00 in the morning. I'm oh my God, I have such an amazing thought about something. And I'll write it down and then I'll be oh no, I'm not going to do that. Anyway, I mean, I've written so many movies at 2:00 in the morning that I'll never know. But Jim just said, well, look, if I produce it, will you do it? And I'll help you get through this. And I have to tell you, from day one, Mario Cantone was our first guest. And forget it. People just glommed onto it. And we are now in season 2, episode 4 coming up. And it's incredible. And what's so amazing, Krista, is the reason I got involved with the Web Fest is through Lewis Black, the great Lewis Black.
Yeah.
And he wrote a web series called The Mentors, and I was in one of the episodes, and then I won an award, a special guest star award, because Lewis and I wrote it basically together. And Lewis is going to be on my show December 4th.
Oh, wonderful.
So it's so cool that we're all kind of circular, and it's all coming back. And it's just kind of great. It's a great communication tool. It's a great way to engage. I was really happy that Lauren asked me to be a jury member. I love her. I love what WebFest is doing. I loved watching the films. People, particularly in very terrible times, and let's face it, Krista, we're living in terrible times. Artists will pave the way.
Absolutely.
Artists save the world.
Absolutely.
And they are doing it. And the fact that I can be even a small part of that is fantastic to me. And also, I've written a play with Richard Greenberg, the great Richard Greenberg, Tony Award-winning author, and my friend Maddie Corman. We've written a play together through email.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy? And it's about people in quarantine.
Okay.
And there's going to be a lot of those plays. You just know it.
Yes.
But it actually turns into a whole sort of murder mystery thing. And we are now getting, people really want to do it. So, and we're probably going to film it or live stream it or whatever. We're not really sure yet. But, look, for someone who wanted to go to bed for 4 months, I have been actually pretty creative. I mean, there's probably too much wine involved. Probably. But I feel really good that I got this show. I wrote a play, and then I did a movie.
You did a movie?
Bush. Yes, I did a movie with Charles Bush, Andre DeShields, Tim Daly, Margaret Cho.
Wow.
Right? We just finished a couple of weeks ago. We did a movie that Charles Bush wrote. We filmed it upstate New York for 2 weeks. Then we did a week of filming in New York City.
Okay.
And it's going to go to the festival circuit, obviously sometime next year.
So exciting.
But I was like, well, I wrote a play, I have a YouTube show, and I made a movie. I'm done.
You're wearing all the hats.
Yeah. So, anyway.
And you've been working with Charles since like the mid 80s, right? Like,
yeah, we're old.
We're like, Julie is Charles' muse. Like, I was like, oh, I aspire to be someone's muse one day. What an honor.
Well, if you're going to be someone's muse, it better be with someone who's good. And Charles is a terrific playwright. And I did meet him in the 80s. And because like I said, I'm so old now, Krista, that I'm actually a hologram. I'm actually not even a real human being at this point. I died 8 years ago.
Right?
But, I'll be a hologram. But no, Charles and I have so much fun, and he's written so many parts for me. We met in the 80s, and we really didn't take to each other when we first met. We ended up together because he desperately needed like a co-star for this little skit that he wrote called Vampire Lesbians of Sodom. And everyone in the world turned him down, including his own sister. And he was desperate. And we didn't really take to each other right away. He thought I was just, I think, another loudmouth blonde. And I just was like, well, I don't need another gay friend. I have a lot of gay male friends. But anyway, I did get involved, and I am so glad because I really admired even his one-person show. He had done a one-person show called Charles Bush Alone with a Cast of Thousands, and he played men and women and all different types of people. And it was really, I thought it was a fantastic show. Anyway, there we are on the Lower East Side in the 1980s, which was a crack den. I mean, it was not a theater, Krista. It was a crack den. But, in the 1980s, the world was so different. And people, again, this is what artists do. They just create things out of nothing. And we found this space because this guy just like rented a garage. I mean, it was crazy. But we were just doing what we were doing. Nobody did this for money. There was no money.
Yeah, I was going to say that's like part of being a thespian is like we love that. Like, oh, I found this really great space. Even now, I mean, there are a few more, rules and precautions in place to make sure everybody's safe. But there's still that just love of the art and love of experimenting, and sometimes getting weird and goofy and having fun with it. Yeah,
and we had no real thought of, oh, this is going to make our careers, and now we're just going to be, you know what I mean? It was like, hey, let's have some fun on the weekends.
Yeah,
and that's how it all started. And then what happened was there was such a fantastic creative force bubbling up on the Lower East Side. And remember, Krista, this was during the AIDS epidemic,
Sure.
and people needed laughter. People were so sad. People were scared, freaked out. We were not getting help from the government, which, hello, isn't that similar to what is going on right now?
Few parallels there.
Yeah, few parallels there. We weren't getting any help, and we were like, oh, well, our friends are getting sick. And so anyway, we started this theater company, and I have to say, it really took off, and we were so fortunate. And then in the latter part of the 80s, we started doing off-Broadway instead of off-Broadway. You know, we were so off-Broadway, we were almost in another state. But
But you were doing it.
yeah, eventually we actually went to an off-Broadway theater. And it was really the great drama critic, Frank Rich, who really started writing reviews for our theater company, and it really put us on the map. And it changed our lives. It really did change our lives.
That is such a wonderful story. And it made me think of, like, when you said we weren't doing it to advance our careers. I often think that in the industry on the whole, when people are like, well, you know, where do you see your career going? Or like, is this gig going to advance your career or something? And I'm like, I think that's when you start to fall apart, when you have like that much gravitas to it, that it becomes life or death. This is going to make or break me. You really got to do it for the love of it.
Absolutely. I mean, literally, we were trying to get through the weekend. I mean, no joke. We wanted to just have fun with each other and get through the weekend and kind of like express ourselves. And also because we did really think that Charles was so funny as a playwright, we just had a blast. You know, it was really just a fun thing for a group of friends to do at a terrible time. And but however, I mean, once we really came to understand, hey, wait a minute, let's form a theater company. We took it very seriously as artists. We didn't, again, no money. There was no money involved here. I think the first production was like $50. I think we all wore our own clothes. And I think there were like 2 or 3 wigs that were purchased on 14th Street for like $19. I'm not joking. And Kathy, we have a friend, Kathy Carr, who still does Charles's wigs, and she was just so good at dealing with hair. She made these $19 wigs look remarkable, and but everything else was our own clothes and blah blah. And I mean, I remember wearing a cape because I was supposed to be a vampire. I wore a cape that had like a wire hanger in the back of it to make it look bigger, like so that it would get out, like as if I had big shoulders. And like I had like a wire hanger down my back because we like twisted it. Yeah. And really, and a piece of big fabric, and it just stuck out. But you know, the thing that was so great, Krista, is that the audience loved that we were doing this sort of like ragamatag. That added to the allure of it. They knew that we were just broke actors doing this thing. And we didn't even want fancy costumes. The more homemade it was, the better. The better.
It feels like that almost, like at this time too, was like a beautiful mirror for the state of the world too. And the way that people were feeling, and probably offered up like immense healing for like all of you working on it and people coming to see it, where it was like, okay, like nobody knows what's going on, but they're getting through it. We're getting through it somehow.
You're absolutely right, Krista. And, you know, at that time, particularly during the Lower East Side, it looked like Berlin after the war. It was really, really, it was dangerous. There was a lot of drugs. It was very sort of burnt out. People, a lot of abandoned buildings. So again, you're absolutely right. We were all part of this, this sort of terrible time in the city's history and the history of health and this terrible plague. So it's like that rag and the tag quality was mirroring what was also going on in the culture. And that's very similar to what happens, you know, during the Gilded Age when people spend outrageous amounts of money on, you know, a wedding or something, you know? So it was very, very challenging, and yet we were thrilled to do it. And also, we were so happy to be doing something creative.
I love that story so much, Julie. We have a question here in the chat.
Yes.
We have a few coming through. Let's start with the first one. It says, "Hi, Julie. Last time I saw you on stage was last year in Tootsie. How fun was it to make this iconic movie into a great musical?"
Well, actually, that's a great question.
Really good.
And it is an iconic movie. And I actually did watch it after we started rehearsals in Tootsie. But I think what happened was Robert Horn, who wrote the book, and David Yazbek, who wrote the music, realized that the world has changed so exponentially from the 1980s. So the character, for example, of Julie, who was played by Jessica Lange in the movie, very victimized. They did not want to do that. That was very politically, you know, very old-fashioned and quite frankly, politically incorrect. That is not what women want to be seeing or doing, to be the victim. And so they immediately decided to change that kind of quality in that character. And they knew that they had to really modernize it and make it their own. And they had to, there were so many funny moments in the movie of Tootsie, but what they really wanted to carry with it is just the idea that someone is so desperate to be an actor that he or she will do anything to do it, instead of just concentrating on, you know, say the drag element or even the romantic element. They wanted to just create this terrible desperation in people who have to do something and they're being thwarted time and again. So, but it was really fun. And of course, the cast was phenomenal. Santino Fontana is amazing as Michael Dorsey. And to work with that high level of a performer, boy, you better bring your A game, let me tell you.
I'm sure. Yeah, but it sounds like you do. I watched a little bit of one of your interviews where you were talking about how you're not great in the rehearsal process, but boy, are you a performer on stage. And I have always been that way as well. I got some of those comments too, where people were like saying to the director, "I wasn't too sure, like, why did you hire her?" Or like, "This is something you grew up with or something, like, how's this gonna work out?" And then opening night, they were like, "I couldn't even keep up with you."
It's so true. The word process, my head starts exploding. There's another question they want to hear about Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers, who really is maybe one of the greatest comedians ever, and a terrific actress, actually.
Yes.
She became a Charles Bush fan.
Okay.
And she totally got our company right away because she's so smart.
Yeah.
So she literally would like come backstage after we would do these shows, and we were like, do you know what I mean, Joan? And she really got very friendly with Charles. She really admired his work. So consequently, you know, Charles would like call me up and be like, "Hey, you want to have lunch with Joan Rivers?" And I was like, no, I don't want to have lunch with Joan Rivers. So we would meet, and, you know, she was so transformative, because what was so amazing about her, besides everything, is her career had such longevity, and she constantly transformed herself. You know, she was a comedian. She really, you know, wanted to start out to be, I think, an actress, but then she realized, oh, hey, I'm actually real funny.
Yeah.
And a writer. And, you know, let's face it, when she was doing it, how hard were those struggles? She had to really fight her path.
Yeah.
And then, of course, after her husband died and her TV show was canceled, she came back to New York, and she then started doing, you know, all over again. She had to start all over again and do fresh material. And then, of course, she became the fashion police icon. And I just love the idea that people are constantly transforming themselves, reinventing and not being stopped. And she was always so supportive. She came to all our shows. And Charles and I would go out with her, and she always was so supportive of other performers, and she'd give you tips, and she would come in the audience and she would sit there and just howl and laugh. A lot of comedians don't laugh at other comics, they just kind of sit there and judge, she really was just one of a kind and unique. And Margaret Cho and I, I love to drop names, but Margaret Cho and I were just talking about this too, that, she was very generous to all of us. So we miss her a lot.
That's wonderful.
Yes. And somebody's asking about Bitsy Von Muffling, who was the character on Sex and the City.
I was going to ask that too. Dying to hear about Bitsy Von Muffling. That character was written for you, right?
It was, I'm sorry, Krista?
That character was written for you, right?
Yes. What happened was Michael Patrick King, who was the executive producer of Sex and the City, again, he was a big fan of mine because of he used to come to the Charles Busch shows and whatnot.
Okay.
And he always used to visit, backstage, and he'd say, "Oh, one of these days I'm going to write something for you, Halston." I was like, yeah, okay, yeah. Thank you. I love you too, Michael, but bye-bye. And of course, Michael Patrick King became this enormously successful. I mean, he used to do stand-up with like Mario Cantone, and he was a struggling writer, artist, performer. And then, of course, he became, the king of the world. And I would occasionally get auditions for Sex and the City, and I'd be like, I guess I'll go out to Queens, because that's where the studio was, in Astoria. And and I was always getting lost on the G train or something. I don't know. I just, where am I?
It sounds like an adventure.
Yeah, these were the days before Uber,
Okay.
Anyway, I would audition. I auditioned a number of times, and I never got it. And every time I'd run into Michael, he'd say, "Oh, one of these days, Halston, one of these days." I was like, "Michael, please do stop saying that, because I love you. You don't have to keep saying that. I know you're not going to write anything for me, so don't worry about it." Well, one day, and I don't remember, I guess it was at a book signing. Maybe it was Cindy Chupak, the writer for Sex and the City. I was at a book signing, and then she was there, and she said, "Oh, hi, Julie, I just want you to know, Michael and I have a character that we're writing for you for Sex and the City, and you and Nathan Lane." Wait, what? What's happening?
To just drop down.
Yeah, what's happening? But in show business, you hear things like this all the time, and you go, "Oh, okay, well, call my agent."
Right. Yeah.
Well, they did call my agent, and they did write Bitsy Von Muffling for me, and I did marry Nathan Lane in those episodes, and I am so grateful. I can't tell you, because as you know, Sex and the City is such a phenomenon. I still get checks, and
that's also a phenomenon.
Yeah, I bless Michael Patrick King, Cindy, everyone involved, John Melfi, everyone involved with Sex and the City, Sarah Jessica. It just was so wonderful. And people literally, I was in Turkey in, I guess, 2010.
Okay.
I was wearing a little Sex and the City jacket.
Right.
I got some swag, I love swag. And literally, like, a group of gay Turks followed me down the main street of Istanbul, and they were going, "Bitsy, Tootsie. And I ended up having drinks with them. No, it was fantastic. It was like, you gotta be kidding me. So Sex and the City is, just so near and dear to my heart. And Michael is one of the greatest. And he's another one, he comes to the theater a lot. He sees me and everything.
Yeah.
Always so wonderful. He wrote me a letter after seeing me in You Can't Take It With You. And it was so amazing. And I still keep it. And whenever I don't feel good about myself, I pull out that letter. And I go, you see? So anyway, there we have it. It was wonderful. I feel very blessed.
Do you remember that moment when you heard that there was that offer for you to take on that role and to work with Nathan Lane? Do you remember what you did, how you felt?
Yeah, I started crying.
Sure.
I did. I started crying because here's the thing that's so great. You just go, oh my God, it finally came through. It finally came through. But what was so nice is that the offer was exceedingly generous. That's all I'm going to say. And Sarah and Nathan and Michael and everyone involved with Sex and the City, I think wanted to make sure that Nathan and I were just treated very equally, even though Nathan is a huge star. And, whatever, I feel like, he's Jupiter. He's Jupiter and I'm Pluto.
I intuitively wanted to say when you said it was an exceedingly generous offer, I wanted to just say, but you deserve it.
Oh, well,
you are such a light and such a legend, truly. And I saw you in Hairspray. I did.
Oh my God. That's fantastic.
I can absolutely speak to that and speak from my heart. You really absolutely.
Oh, Krista, this means everything. That's so sweet of you. Thank you so much. But, I felt like, well, he's Jupiter, I'm Pluto. But anyway, the universe they created was so generous and so lovely. And I just was like, whoa. So it was wonderful. It was really, really wonderful. And thank you. And Hairspray was so much fun to do. And I am still really good friends with a lot of my Hairspray cohorts, particularly Andrew Reynolds, who's become a major star. And he was on Virtual Halston. We had so much fun. And Michelle Cottrell, who was the dance captain at Hairspray, is now one of my managers.
Oh, wow.
And she made the transition from being a dancer to a dance captain, choreographer. She is now a major player manager for a company called Industry Entertainment with Bill Butler. And she is phenomenal. As one of her best friends said, well, Michelle has always been used to bossing everybody around. Now she's just going to get paid a lot of money for it. I thought, well, good for her. She's great. So I'm really still good friends with a lot of the Hairsprayers. And Harvey Firestein and I are, again, name dropping. Let's name drop. He and I are very close friends. And I also worked with Bruce Flange, John Connett, who unfortunately has passed on. We had just a great group for so long. And Diana DeGarmo, who was on American Idol. I think she was on the first season of American Idol.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, she played my daughter for like a 3-month stint.
I remember that.
Yeah, and I was just like, oh, geez Louise. What stunt casting? What are we doing? Stunt casting? American Idol. Well, she turned out to be fantastic.
Yeah.
And she and I are still friendly. And in fact, she is, I think she's down in Nashville now, and she's like recording all the time. She's doing great. She's fabulous. Yeah.
Good for her. I think we skipped over, how did you enjoy early life in music theater?
Oh, well, I'm not really musically inclined.
Okay.
I can't really sing or dance. But what you always realize about musical comedy, particularly, is they always need a funny person.
Yes.
So I kind of snuck my way into the musical world. my early life in the musical theater was a little fraught because when I first got into musicals, there were so many trained people who were so good, and it came so naturally to them. For me, you know, learning how to do choreography, for one thing, dancers think very differently. You know, everything is in their heads beat-wise. They know how to count. They're like, oh, okay, on the second, and a 2, 3, 4. First of all, I practically failed math, so even counting is an
Not
issue.
your forte.
Not my forte. So it's become a little scary. So I had to really work very, very hard when I first started doing musicals. It has become easier. It still creates a lot of tension in me because I'm always working with people that have such skills in that area. However, there is nothing, and I really mean this, there is nothing like being in a big Broadway hit musical. It is, in a way, I wish every performer in the world, film, television, web series, whatever, should have that opportunity to do, even once in their life, a huge Broadway big musical. It's an astounding feeling. And to come on and do it big and have that kind of incredible synergy of the movement and the sets and the costumes and the audience's reaction and the overtures and the music, it's extraordinary. And that's why people,
magical.
It is magical. So, and it's never gonna, you know, people are like, well, you know, the musical theater, I guess it's dead, you know. Well, yes, it is dead for now because things are, you know, but believe me, it's not like people are never going to see Hamilton again. These works are too great to just throw away.
Yeah, and I think I just saw a video that like a bunch of Broadway stars got together and they were singing like Sunday in the Park with George in Times Square. Like artists will always find a way to make it work.
They always do. And also that wonderful Sunday in the Park with George on the red steps of Times Square, Bernadette Peters was part of that. Andrew Reynolds was part of that. I was upstate doing that film with Shaw. A lot of New Yorkers were so inspired by that. People were literally just crying, stopping and crying and listening. I actually, Frank DeLella from New York One does something on Sunday nights called the Breslin. And there's a restaurant, I didn't know about this. There's a restaurant in Chelsea called the Breslin, and they're offering like a 4-course meal outside, socially distanced. Yeah. And they have Broadway stars and singers singing outside of windows. Oh. It's so crazy, but Max von Essen, who was in American in Paris, he has the most glorious voice. He sang to us outside this window while we ate and drank this beautiful meal and whatnot. And it was like a scene out of a French or Italian film. And people were going by on bicycles and stopping and listening. And it was glorious.
It sounds like it. I was going to say that feels very European. Like
it was very European. And like I said, when people were coming by on their bicycles, you know, it was like a Victoria De Sica film or something, you know. It was just gorgeous. Truffaut any minute was going to pop up, but it was so beautiful and it was glorious. It was a glorious evening.
Oh, what an experience. And like Chelsea is I always stay in Chelsea when I'm in New York. I love Chelsea so much now.
It is. It's a fantastic place. Now, where are you? You're normally out there where are you?
California. Yeah. I moved out here from Toronto and I lived in Berlin for a bit.
Oh.
Yeah.
Berlin is such a exciting, amazing place, apparently. That is the one city I have not been to yet.
I think you would absolutely love it.
I do.
It's starting to shift a little bit, and the government is kind of trying to stop too much development from coming in because they don't want to lose that sort of essence. But when I was there, I was going to grad school, and it really felt like what I imagine London and Paris felt like years and years ago, where like so many artists were coming in and just creating, philosophizing and writing. Everyone at 2 p.m. Like, it didn't matter what you were doing. It was like, let's go to a park somewhere and write something and, like, you know, take some drinks and some snacks and just hang out and enjoy life. And you would absolutely have a ball there.
Oh, I totally would. Somebody's asking, advice for new creatives during this time. What would you advise? Well, you know, creativity is different for everyone. And I think the first thing you have to do is get past the fear. That's number one. And that might take a while. It really might. And I know, being kind of a fearful person myself, I think it's important to reach out to other people that you know and that you trust. And you say, hey, I have these ideas, but I'm nervous. You know, first things first, which is, what is the feeling? You know, and then to say, okay, how can we make this happen? One of the great things about technology is that you can play around a bit. Now, I happen to be frightened of technology, so that's why when, like, Jim Caruso said, let's do this virtual show, I was like, wait, I'll do it if, you know, Spielberg comes to my apartment. If he comes, I'll do it, you know. But you have to get over certain fears.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that might take a few weeks. It really might. It just, everyone's different.
Sometimes it never goes away. And you just
absolutely, it doesn't go away, but to reach out to people that you trust and say, you know, I'd like to write a play, or I'd like to write a short story, or I'd like to make a film, or do a virtual show. And I believe in taking steps. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think what happens with so many creative people, I know, listen, at 2 a.m, I'm like, I've just written the most fantastic film in the world. And then you kind of go, wait, you haven't written a word. It's all in there. You haven't written one word down.
Right.
But baby steps are good. Baby steps go, okay, so I've got a few people that I really trust, and we're going to kick around some ideas for a play that maybe will live stream. And I think people have to make sure they don't get ahead of themselves. Like, well, am I going to give it to Steven Spielberg? Am I going to give it to Manhattan Theater Club? That's why I was watching that fantastic film, Rada Blank's new film, the 40-year-old version. It's so true. It's so good. The process that she went through, defeat after defeat after defeat, and the feeling. It's take baby steps, and each step will lead to the next step. So that's what my advice would be. Is reach out to people and take your steps. Don't stop taking your steps.
Right. Don't be discouraged. You'll sometimes be surprised that, like, some of the people you think you can't get to agree to it will be so happy and willing. And then sometimes you'll ask a friend who, like, hasn't worked on a lot but is really talented, and they will turn you down for whatever reason. Don't let that hold you back.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm amazed. I mean, and some of it right now is a perfect time because a lot of people are not very busy. Exactly. You know, or they would be thrilled to be asked.
Yes.
So, I think it's hard to have confidence when you're, I mean, it really is. It's such a, you know, you can see why mothers don't want their children to be actors or filmmakers or whatever, because it can be a brutal business. But you know, Krista, if you're into doing it, you're going to do it.
Yeah. And I think we have one more question too, but I think anything, if you decide to go to med school or law school or go out and get a job right away out of high school or whatever it is that you feel called to do, there are challenges and ups and downs. And so
absolutely, just applying to graduate school, I broke out into a cold sweat. Do you know what I mean? Or like going like, oh, I think, you know, when people say like, I want to be a lawyer, or I'm gonna, you know, I want to be the top salesperson, or any challenge that anyone, or even like, I wanna be the best mom I can be, or whatever, and I'm going to be the creative mom.
that is
Any
not a job either.
yeah, any challenge, and take the baby steps. I see one of them is you have so many Broadway stories. Any faves or faves to work with? Well, I have some, but I don't know if I can say all these stories. Some of them are maybe not for public consumption in this format. I actually love the show that I'm working on at the time is always sort of my favorite show.
Sure.
Because
it feels like your family, it's current, it's...
Yeah. And also I'm having fun at that moment, you know. I will say that Hairspray really was a 2-year period of my life. The only reason I left Hairspray was to do one season of a CBS sitcom called The Class with Jesse Tyler Ferguson and Lizzie Kaplan. Otherwise, I would never have left Hairspray. But I love things when they go awry, or like when things just get nutty. Like I was doing The Divine Sister with Charles Bush and our company.
Yeah.
And there's a very funny sequence where Charles says to me, and it's very much based on this Sound of Music thing when Mother Superior says to Maria, "What is it you can't face?" And of course the audience thinks she said something else. And Charles says it to me, and the audience started laughing. "What is it you can't face?" And this woman in the audience was very upset and offended by this, got up in the audience and screamed, "No! No!" Well, Charles and I could barely contain ourselves on the stage. And luckily, my character is supposed to run off.
Okay. So you could roll with it.
I could run off. I was laughing so hard backstage. I almost missed my next entrance because I literally was like on the floor laughing. But poor Charles had to continue the scene.
Oh.
But we were this woman was so upset. No, she just stood up. So that is one of my favorites. And yeah, I love it when things go a little awry. You know, that's always fun. And you know, when somebody like is late for their entrance or whatever, and you have to like cover for them and stuff like that. And you find yourself saying things like, well, I just spoke to him a minute ago. Do you know what I mean? Like things like that have happened. That happened at Tootsie. And I was like, oh, yeah, he was right here a minute ago. And, you know, then somebody finally comes on the stage.
Yeah.
And so those are my
theater.
What's
that's the beauty of theater, though, right? Is getting to play in that way.
Absolutely. And like another great thing that happened was one time the power went out when we were doing Tootsie, and there I am in my Rita Marshall outfit, and somebody said, "Halston, get out there and entertain them." You know, so Santino went out there and he was entertaining them. And then I came on again to start the scene again, and I was able to improv a bit, and the audience just loved it. You know, I mean, they love that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those are great things. And working with James Earl Jones and You Can't Take It With You was amazing.
Wow.
And yeah, and you know, just Rue McClanahan and the women. A little crazy, I'll just tell you. I mean, I loved her, but one time she decided she was having allergies, and she decided to take a Sudafed, and then in between shows, she had a glass of wine with her meal, and then she decided to come back and take another Sudafed.
Oh no!
And she was out. I mean, we had to wait We had to shake Rue up and say, "You have to get out there, Rue. You have to." She was like, "Where am I? Where am I?" And it was hilarious. But she was a dear lady. But yeah, things like that. It's like, don't take Sudafed and a glass of wine.
Right.
It's not a glass.
Definitely not. Okay, well, we're going to have to wrap it up. I unfortunately, so sadly, have to leave you. I am teaching a class virtually, also in New York.
I love it.
Yeah.
What is the class, Krista? What is the class?
It's I do like a lot of healing work and energy work. So it's like an integration of like healing, meditation, and visual art.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We need that now more than ever.
Exactly. Yeah. People are loving it. I'm so Lauren says Krista is amazing.
Krista
Yes.
is amazing. And you are such a doll.
Hello.
And this was wonderful.
Thank you so much for doing it.
I really wanted to say as our last note, Julie, I get the felt sense of like you having really maximized your joy in this life. Like if I was going to just describe your spirit, I would say Julie knows how to maximize her joy.
Well, you know, I'm getting a little teary, but thank you. That really means a lot. I have worked at it, you know, I mean, not that people should know this, but like I lost my husband a couple of years ago, and you know, being joyful sometimes when you're, you know, grieving is very difficult. But I really believe in that. I believe in service and I believe in joy. And I think that's why not go through life that way?
Yeah.
So that really means a lot to me that is going out in the world. It really does.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank both Julie and Krista. I really appreciate that. Thanks for your patience at the beginning.
It was great. I think the world of you, Lauren. I love what you're doing. Krista, what a pleasure.
Yes.
And thank you to everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a good one, guys.
Take care.
Thank you. Mwah.
Bye-bye.